The figure represented a monster of vaguely anthropoid outline, but with an octopus-like head, whose face was a mass of feelers, a scaly, rubbery-looking body, prodigious claws on hind and fore feet, and long, narrow wings behind. It appeared to belong to something horribly remote and distinct from mankind as we know it, something frightfully suggestive of old and unhallowed cycles of life in which our world and our conceptions have no part.
I'm Fear, an extract from H.P. Lovecraft's story The Call of the Cthulhu. I've been joined by one of Scotland's biggest Lovecraft fans, Burniston co-creator and comedian Robert Florence. Welcome.
Hi there, how you doing?
I'm fine, and you sat back in your chair and closed your eyes and just let that extract wash over you.
Yeah,
there,
no, I was loving that extract. I was thinking actually that anybody tuning in at that point might have just thought it was the football phone in they were listening to.
I was ready to walk past because that's what you do in London, and to be honest, I nearly did. But then she nearly dropped the cactus, and the other packages all shifted about, and she had to stoop to keep them all up, and for a moment there was something sweet and small and helpless about her. I stifled a smile, and then she looked at the cabbie, but he was doing nothing, just listening to talk sport and smoking, and I don't know why, because like I say, this is London, I asked if I could help. And she smiled at me. This incredible smile, and suddenly I felt all manly and confident, like a handyman who just knows which nail to buy. And she's saying, "Thank you, this is so kind of you." And then there's that moment, the glance, the fleeting glimpse of that something I mentioned. And it felt like a beginning. But the cabbie was impatient and the night air cold, and I suppose we were just too British to say anything else, and then it was thanks, and the smile again. She closed the door, and I watched the cab move off. Taillights fading into the city, hope trailing and clattering on the ground behind it. And then, just as the moment seemed over, I looked down. I had something in my hands, a small plastic box. I read the words on the front. Single use, 35mm, disposable camera.
There you go, a moment from Danny Wallace's novel Charlotte Street.
In my original accent as well.
That was one of our producers, Bobby. I think he's got a new vocation to explore. I think he did that
If Bobby's
extremely well.
available for audiobooks, I'm telling you, he's totally... You can do my next one, definitely.
Take comfort from this. You have a book in your hand, not a loaded gun or a parking fine, or an invitation card to the wedding of the one you should have married, but were too selfish. Always imagining there would be someone better out there, but there wasn't, and you missed the boat. And now you're pushing 40. What are the chances of you finding that perfect elusive partner? Highly unlikely. Like an empty glass on a barroom counter, loneliness beckons. Not an empty glass or a bottle smashed on a barroom counter, a photograph of the one you will always regret not marrying, not a letter from the hospital, the results devastating. After the disaster, the dust and the screaming, a child's arm thrust out from the rubble. You have none of these in your hand, a dirty syringe or a deadly scorpion, a Molotov cocktail or an overdose, not a loaded gun or a parking fine. You have a book in your hand. Take comfort from this.
A beautiful poem from Roger McGough. And a very philosophical frame of mind there, Roger, but you're within striking distance of 75. Is this collection kind of you being a wise old head, basically?
I've always been a wise old head from the age of 7. That was a lovely reading, by the way.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it?
Wasn't it? And it's nice to hear someone else. I don't often hear people reading my own poems, or if they do sometimes, it's a sort of a Liverpool accent. So that was really delightful.
Got myself a crying, talking, sleeping, walking, living doll.
Comic relief first popped into the heads of founders Lenny Henry and Richard Curtis in 1985 and was marked the following year by this single by Cliff Richard and the Young Ones. However, it wasn't until 1988 that the very first Red Nose Day telethon hit our screens.
I can tell you that the total we have already has passed the million mark. We've got 1,091,572.
On the evening of February the 5th, 1988, 150 performers put aside their paychecks, popped on the plastic red noses and played it for laughs. Highlight of the night proved to be a one-off edition of the Blackadder saga, featuring Sir Edmund's cavalier 17th century ancestor.
Oh, Rick! Yes, sir. Oh, get me some mulled ale, will you? I'm freezing.
Are you horny? Looking for mindless sexual encounters with undesirable people? Then come to Hull. There are people in Humberside who want to meet people like you right now. Socially dysfunctional, psychologically damaged and pathologically dangerous. They're all online now. Go to actuallythat'sabitsore.com to meet people who don't like people now.
By the time I turned up in Casablanca, the football pitch, which housed the festival, had been parched dry by the hot sun, and as people began to dance, the dust would rise up like steam from their shoes. In the air, the sound of clattering drums and plaintive voices, and the heavy atmosphere of anticipation for what was to come in the next 4 days. Boulevard des Jeunes Musiciens, or Boulevard as it's known locally, is set on 2 separate stages. One, a local rugby ground where a number of new, less well-known groups play throughout the day, and then in the evening, the attention turns to a football stadium about 200 metres down the road, where 3 or 4 higher-profile bands perform each evening. So what exactly happens at Boulevard? What kind of music would you find being played? Here lies another of the unique festival's charms. Each day is dedicated to a different type of music. It opens with hip-hop.